On the very last episode, I told you all the great, wonderful benefits of doing solo episodes. But today, I'm going to tell you how to build community through interviews with none other than a legend who is a master at building networking and community. And because it's Podcast Movement Week, I've got a very special surprise in line for you.
Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? Thank you so much for being here. I am Chris, and I'm from the original Chris and Christine Show podcast. You know, you can find out every single thing about that show, including new episodes like we just did last weekend at chrisandchristineshow.com. Link to it in the show notes of this very episode. You scroll on down, and there it is. Ta-da! Hey, but you know what? Enough about me. Hey, how are you doing? How is your podcast coming along? Do you have a podcast? Well, maybe you do, and maybe you don't. I would think you probably do if you're listening to this show right here. And by the time I release this episode, I will be at Podcast Movement in Los Angeles. It'll be my first time going to any kind of event like this in the industry. I have pretty much been a podcast hermit for the most of all my podcasting career for the most part. So I'm very excited to go up to Los Angeles, which really is only like a 2-hour drive away from here. And I'm going to go up there. I'm staying for a few nights in a hotel near the event. And I'm going to be going there for I think 3 or 4 days at the actual podcast event. I cannot wait to meet people up there, see people in the industry, people that I've met virtually through the podcasting space, meet them face to face. It's going to be super exciting. And while I'm up there, I plan to do something really cool for you. So I had this idea the other night. I'm thinking, you know what? When I travel to places, I always bring my little MacBook Pro computer laptop with me. And I usually don't do any kind of real podcasting stuff because it's mainly I just take it just to have it and maybe do a little work on it or whatever while I'm up there. But I thought, you know what? This is a big event I'm going to be at. And every single night after the event, I'm going to have all these cool things to talk about. So then like a light bulb went off and I got this idea. Why not, after each day of going to the event and checking out all the cool things and talking to all the cool people and seeing all the things, why not, when it's all over and I'm back at my hotel room that same night, why not from the hotel room host a live stream video directly to YouTube recapping the entire day? Then I will take that very same audio, save it, and then for the very next episode, I will package it all together as a recap episode of everything I did at Podcast Movement. So if you want to catch the live stream, it'll happen live right after I get back into the hotel after the event. Each day I'm there, I will live stream it directly to my YouTube channel. If you do not know my YouTube channel, link to that YouTube channel will be in the show notes of this very episode. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you'll have access to the live stream event. I'm going to see if I can do Q&A or comments or all that kind of stuff live while it's happening each night right after Podcast Movement. Now, I'm really hoping that the Wi-Fi in the hotel really holds up, but usually it does. I have not had too many difficulties using Wi-Fi at hotel properties, but we're talking about a live stream here with video and audio. So we just don't know until we give it a shot. But that is the plan. Oh, and I almost forgot. If you happen to not make the physical live stream of me talking about all the great, wonderful Podcast Movement stuff, don't you worry. That very same video of me live streaming will be on my YouTube channel permanently after it's been uploaded. So if you happen to catch this episode after it already happened, like maybe 2 weeks or a month later after we do this event, don't you worry. On my YouTube channel, my videos of all the things will be right there, ready to go. And if you want to still listen on the very next episode, I will play the audio from the videos they will be in the very next episode. That way, everybody has an opportunity to hear everything that I'm talking about when it comes to podcast movement this week. And to pull the curtain back, you're wondering, how am I making this happen? What is the magic behind all this live streaming stuff? I decided to dust off my old StreamYard account. I've had StreamYard for a while now, and I never really used it. And I just started playing with it last week. I'm like, well, let me play with this thing. Let's make it happen. Let's see what it can do. And I'm only using the free version as of right now, which allows me to stream my video content, my thing, stream it to only one platform at a time. So right now, I've been trying to stream directly to Instagram, which I found out is a little more trickier than it makes it seem to be. YouTube seems to be pretty easy. Twitter X seems pretty easy to stream to. It's pretty straightforward. But with Instagram, it's like a two-step verification process. You got to click two different things, and then there's like a big delay. It kind of threw me off. And it really threw me off when I had scheduled an interview with Rena Friedman Watts. She is from the Better Call Daddy podcast, and I had this grand idea to do this great live stream recording directly to Instagram Live, both of us having a conversation all about media marketing, because Rena is like a media marketing expert. She is a solid professional when it comes to marketing and building community and building networks. She is a master at that stuff. So I said, why not have her on live, doing a live stream and recording the whole thing for you later to play back in another podcast episode. But unfortunately, for some reason, I could not get the live stream part to work on Instagram Live. But luckily for me, I was able to record the entire conversation on my Rodecaster Pro with one click of a button. That's the beauty of having something like a Rodecaster Pro 2, or maybe even a Zoom PodTrack P4, something like that, a physical device that you should always be recording on, no matter what, especially doing some kind of live stream event like I was trying to pull off. But it's all good anyways, because we had an amazing conversation talking about marketing and promoting your podcast and all the great, wonderful things that you need to know about when you create a podcast. So please enjoy my conversation with the one and only Rena Friedman Watts.
I try to gauge where I'm getting the most engagement and spend my time there and maximize there. I do believe that if you're a content creator or small business owner, that you really kind of need to have an account on each platform, but I don't post as frequently from all of the same places. So I have noticed that Threads has really good engagement.
Yeah, I
Really
noticed
good
that too.
engagement.
At first, people were kind of turned off by Threads, myself included, because I heard, oh, just another freaking wannabe Twitter thing come into the market, just another thing, you know? And so I kind of set an account there, put a few things there, but I didn't really like use it just to use it. I just kind of threw stuff on it, like threw it against the wall, see what sticks. But I didn't really do any kind of engagement on there until recently. I started going in there really hardcore, getting a lot of engagement and talking to people and trying to like build community on there, that my Threads started going, blowing up a little bit. Have you noticed the same thing with yours too?
I mean, it's much easier to get connections there and get engagement there than TikTok.
No, why would you say that?
I mean, maybe just the way that I'm using it, but you can't just post clips of your podcast on TikTok and get much engagement from that. But if you come up with a line or two and ask a question to your audience and post a clip on Threads, I feel like it's getting further reach and people are responding to them.
Yeah, I think so too. I think also I heard that because the algorithm set up for Threads is still in the early development stages. It hasn't, I guess developed or whatever. I don't know this stuff at all. I just know that if you put it on there and you get somebody writing back or like responding to something you put on there, there's a higher chance of something happening maybe on Threads of a response than maybe something like a TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but I just imagine that that TikTok is for the kids, really, in the dance videos and just the quick hits and stuff like that. I watched a video on YouTube about how like that whole format is starting to die off and that people are getting just tired of all just a quick, just flashy light videos and just all that stuff, and it's becoming kind of a drain on the brain. You ever notice that too?
Well, I just feel like my videos on TikTok that do the best are as if I throw on a filter and yeah, do something silly with my kid or like use a TikTok audio and like lip sync it. So, do I
But
really need to be doing that? I mean, it gives people
yeah,
a glimpse into my personality and a little bit more about my personal life, but that's not really what I want to focus on.
no, I don't. Well, I guess it also depends on what your end game is going to be for this stuff. Like, where do you want to take the people? Because people are trying to like, oh, I get like 10,000 views on some stupid TikTok video I made or whatever. That's great, but what does it do for you? does
Exactly.
it
And
does
I'm
it
not saying
translate
my
to cash?
whole aim is money, but you know, I yesterday I hosted an event with Bobby Umar, who I met in real life at an event that I was part of the media junket for. I had booked sponsorships for this event, a Gary Vee event 6 years ago called Haste and Hustle, and it was in Toronto, and Bobby was one of the speakers. And I was like, "Oh, hey, I think we're connected on LinkedIn." And it was like a quick passing by of like, "Hey, I think we know each other." And then, we connected on social media, and then his assistant had like seen some of my podcasting clips on LinkedIn, and she reached out to me 6 years later. I'm talking about
Wow.
major long game. And he was like,
Right.
"Hey, I have a membership community." First, she reached out to me. Then he followed up once I was like, "Oh, hey, I met him in person." And yeah, I spoke to a group of like 50 people yesterday that all wanted to know like how to be a good podcast guest, how to get on podcasts, what are the do's and don'ts, what are the best and worst guests that you've had. And I want to share that kind of information on my social media because I feel like it could be useful, but also it helps you connect with people and it shows people a bit of what I'm doing.
That's amazing stuff. So going to your show mainly is in a guest interview style show, you would say, right? Yeah. N-
Yes.
Um, what are some good tips on how to host a good interview with a guest that you may not be too familiar with?
Well, I think that research needs to happen on both sides. I think that the host needs to spend time researching the guest, like their social media, try to find them on every platform. What are they posting about? What did they most recently post about? What are they going through? What do they like to speak on? And then for my show, I'm always like, hey, tell me about your relationship with your dad. I like to know that first.
Yeah, well, your show is called Better Call Daddy, so I would think that. First off, made you come up with the idea of Better Call Daddy?
I live Better Call Daddy. I call him every day, whether we record it or not. And so that it was just he's always who I reach out to. He's my number one fan, my biggest supporter, and I thought that he had a lot of wisdom that helps me in my own life and I wanted to share that with the world truthfully. And what's interesting is I thought I was going to be sharing my dad's wisdom with the world, but what's really happened is other people started sharing their wisdom with us and then it's allowed us to up our wisdom rating.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think people sometimes they'll like live in their own little bubble of the world. And they'll have like their own way of thinking, and they'll think, "Well, this is my way. Is the only way anything works, and it's the way it all works." But then you bring other perspectives into your world, and like, well, maybe that is not always the way that things work, or maybe that's how that goes, or what do you think of this? And I think building different ideas, bringing those ideas into your little world does help you as a person too. And I think that you're doing an amazing job with that. And your show is just going bonkers. It's amazing, and it's a wonder. It's like a machine. You are a machine. You're amazing.
Okay, see what you did right there? You synthesized all my thoughts, you added your thoughts to it, and you brought excitement to the conversation. That is like a pro host right there.
Oh well, thank you.
And
I just pulled that out of my butt, so that's what I do.
and if guests can do that too, then it makes a really nice back and forth. Sometimes even guests can synthesize what the host says and then tie a story in that relates to what the host just shared. And when there's that beautiful back and forth, that makes an awesome guest. And I was even talking to the interdisciplinarian last night that I met on Threads. She has Home Roomed is her podcast. she had posted on Threads that, she's new to sharing her story and she's a new mom and she talks about like the gap in education and how the education system is flawed. And she was like, I would love to guest host on other podcasts. And I was like, I don't really think I've had too many guest hosts. I've had people interview me on their shows, but yeah, I'd be open to that. And she listened to like 4 episodes of my show and she prepared questions. And I was like, it's a 50-50 on whether my dad's going to show up. So if you need to write it out and script it to be more comfortable, like just plan on addressing the questions to me and like maybe my dad will answer after. But my dad showed up and she like pivoted quick on her feet and asked some of the questions that she had in mind when she originally reached out. And it was such a beautiful idea that then I was like, hey, if you have trouble sharing your story, like if you're new to doing that, find ways that you can connect to hosts that are good at sharing their story and things that you relate to that the host shares, and then share parts of your story alongside what the host has revealed.
Yeah, definitely. I think some people feel like they're kind of like they don't want to share too much. They're afraid. They're just afraid of this whole thing, afraid of being, maybe found out as fraud, maybe who knows. And that's the thing too. Some of these hosts or some of these podcasters, not throwing anybody out, but some of them hide behind like a wall that they don't want to share any of their personal stories. They just want to just go out there and just, ask the generic questions to the guest, and in fact, I was on a show once and it was horrible. They never released it, as far as I know, because they never told me they released it. And they were reading a list of questions, like one after the other. And then they like got to the list, and I don't know what happened. Maybe because I was just having a conversation, they lost track of their questions. They asked the same question twice, right off the list. And I was like, you already asked me that question, but I'll answer it again. Okay, do that. It was so unprofessional, but maybe it's just nervous. Maybe it's just nerves. People get very nervous when they are on a show, usually as a guest. Have you found a lot of guests come on your show that are like really, really nervous? You can tell.
I think she was even a little bit nervous, but I think that that's okay. And it reminds me actually of my time at the Jerry Springer Show. Like, it's one thing telling your story to a producer. It's another thing in telling your story when you're being recorded or when it's lights, camera, action, or if you're in a studio and there's like somebody behind a big camera or multiple cameras or a live studio audience. That's why the more you do it, the more you practice, the better at it you get. I have people reach out to me. I literally yesterday, I had a guy and he's very successful, a multi-million-dollar company entrepreneur, has worked with many celebrities. And he was like, hey, how do you get me to Joe Rogan? I was like, have you ever been on a podcast before? Do you own a microphone?
Let's start with
Do
that.
you
Yeah.
know your talking points? Because let me tell you, I had a girl, Riley Gaines, on my show over a year ago. She's now been on Joe Rogan. The way that she articulates her story now versus how she was on my show a year and a half ago is night and day. You
Well,
can't just never be on a podcast and then land on Joe Rogan unless you're like a keynote speaker and you're used to presenting your story.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think changed for her? Like, what do you think made her just more practice with the podcasting, just more stuff?
I think that she's kind of been thrown into the limelight. I think that she didn't even realize that she was going to become a speaker, but she was an Olympian level athlete that tied a trans.
I saw that video. I did see that video on Instagram.
Is it he
Or
was a
on
male. Now he's a female. I don't even know what to say
the
about
controversy
that.
about it
But
because she said she tied, and then they gave the trophy to the other dude,
Leah
chick.
Thomas.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and she was pissed about that, and she was like the whistleblower that came out and all of that. So that's crazy. The whole concept's pretty crazy. But going back to the whole media marketing thing, and you being a complete master at it, what I see you do on Instagram and social media and Twitter or X, whatever you call it now, what I've seen you do is you really get involved with different members of the community, whether it's podcasters, YouTubers, whatever they want to call themselves, content creators. You really get involved with them and you really help them out. You are constantly messaging people. You're constantly retweeting stuff. You're constantly commenting on stuff. You are like a total machine. What drives you to do that?
I mean, just like we're having this conversation right now, I share that with the other people who I know are my people that are engaging with me on all channels. It's just kind of like documenting your life with the people who are actively in it.
Yeah.
So if I like today, I talked to Jeff Devoskin. He's a podcaster and he also is a startup founder and he is working on this tool called Stampede Social. And now that I'm shouting him out in this live, I'll tell him about that and I'll send him the episode. So, he has this tool where on Instagram, if you're sharing a clip of your podcast, on Instagram, you can't put in the comments like a link to the full episode.
Yeah.
But
You can't. Yeah.
through his Stampede Social, you can create a campaign where you're like, hey, if you want to listen to today's episode about a girl leaving Scientology and freedom from a cult, type freedom in the comment. And whoever types hashtag freedom, you can associate hashtag freedom with the link to the episode via Stampede Social.
Nice.
And it works in an Instagram story and it works in an Instagram post.
Okay. So
So
it helps. What you're trying to do is trying to steer a potential listener or viewer to the thing you're trying to steer them to through hashtags.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And Instagram wants to keep you on their page so they don't
They
make
all
anything
do.
clickable.
That's
Even
the whole,
YouTube, you have to like figure out how to make everything clickable by adding the HTTPS in front of, your LinkedIn or your Instagram or anything in the descriptions. They don't make it easy for you to click on something from a description. And yeah, so it's like if I'm learning new tools or if I'm connecting with new podcasters, I try to talk about those things. Another tool that I love is the Braided app. The founder, Michael Abramowitz, is super down to earth and just very reachable. And anybody that I introduce him to, he personally connects with. I think if you're learning useful tips, if you're learning useful information, if you're trying new tools that you actually like, share that information to the community.
yeah. Why
And
keep it all
then,
secret? I mean, it doesn't do anybody any good, So
yeah, exactly. And I use Cast Magic. That saves me a ton of time.
now, Cast Magic, what does that do?
You can drag an MP3 or an MP4 over or a short from YouTube. It's integrated with Vimeo and YouTube, or you can just directly upload your show. And I think it's kind of like Swell AI. I mean, there's a lot of these AI tools, but you can get a summary, you can get a transcript, you can get chapter markers. It gives you ideas for reels. I mean, look, all of this AI stuff still needs tweaking, but it gives me, 10 title suggestions and they're 90% there. It gives you an idea from the audio that you've recorded. It actually pulls from your interview and it gives you title suggestions, SEO optimized title suggestions based upon your interview. And it gives you ideas for a newsletter, ideas for a LinkedIn post. And it has like a magic chat feature where you can say, hey, from this interview, create me a 200-word blog post. So it's
Wow.
integrated with Chat GPT. It's great. And
That's big
yeah.
time saver is what it is, really. You're paying for your time. You're paying for it to save time and also other stuff, because to do this the old-fashioned way, it would take you probably a few days. Everything you just said there, take you a few days to figure all that stuff out. Even if you're fast at it, a couple of days worth of work. And this stuff saves you time. Like, I love using ChatGPT myself. I'm a ChatGPT whore myself because I
Totally.
I use it all the time for titles and descriptions and mainly for 'cause I'm a horrible writer. So mainly for any of that kind of stuff, I have to write stuff out. Like for my show notes on the podcast, I'll run the ideas in there in ChatGPT, spit go, and then it brings it up, and it's pretty close. It's good enough for me. So, and the thing about podcast show notes is that I don't know how many people actually look at them. I think of every show you physically listen to on Apple Podcasts or whatever player you use. Think of every show you listen to. Do you ever look at the show notes? I mean, unless there's a link. If there's no links, you're not looking. I mean, no one's really looking at that stuff. So now they got this whole transcript thing you're doing now in Apple Podcasts. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it yet. It looks great. I love them. They look really good. It's written out like a book versus some of the transcripts. If you look at the YouTube transcripts, you have the line, different lines and stuff. they actually have it written down like a paragraph format, and so it looks nice, and stuff. Although it does not break up speakers, it's all written down one line after the other. But the cool thing is, I found out too, if you talk about mentioning a link. If you mention a link in your episode, like www or go to podtasticaudio.com, in the transcript, it'll physically put in podtasticaudio.com and the link to it right there. Touch it, you're good to go in the transcript. I don't know if other tools do that, but that's a kind of nifty thing. But I don't know how many people are actually looking at that. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. I don't know. I mean, it's another cool tool we can use to help get our message out to more people. And that's really what it's about. But anyways, about your marketing, your media marketing stuff that you do, you have built quite a community on a lot of the platforms. Which of the platforms do you think you like to work the best? Like you are preferring to go on more often?
Yeah, great question. I have a Facebook group that I started around the same time that I started my podcast. And I truthfully got that idea from Kathy Heller. She had amazing engagement in her podcasting community. And I was like, I don't even name it the same thing as my podcast. I was just like, business laughs and LinkedIn, because LinkedIn was the first platform where I became super active, because I had corporate roles where it was my job to reach out to people on LinkedIn all day. So I got really good at that.
What?
Yeah.
There's a job that makes you play on LinkedIn all day?
Pretty much. Yeah, I did it at a couple different companies. One was a financial firm, and he just wanted me to connect with like CPAs and financial advisors. And then we were doing like lunch and learn events, and it was my job to connect with those people and get them to come to our events and market the events. And so I am connected with hundreds of financial advisors.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah,
Have any of them
so
been on your show as a guest?
I have had a few on my show. Yes.
They working the angles. I love it. Now you said Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, but the Facebook groups, the Facebook groups, I say are here where it's at. When you have a Facebook group, is where you can really build
The
community.
engagement there is amazing. I have close to 800 people in there, and they have
Wow.
literally, for the most part, all been with me. But yeah, it's, hey, if you've been on my podcast, or if I've met you at an event, or if I like you on LinkedIn, I also have a private Facebook group where I bounce ideas off my audience to see what topics they engage with the most. So I'm constantly posting in there like 3 to 5 times a week. And every Friday I have Promote Anything Friday, where authors can promote their books or podcasters can promote their podcast, and people know that it's like a Friday thing. So they really don't spam the group and post their stuff the rest of the time. And the rest of the time is like, hey, what's a question that you wish people would ask you? Or what's a topic that you would like me to cover? Or what should I do a solo episode on? Or, hey, I have a friend that just was diagnosed with diabetes. Does anybody know a diabetes influencer? So I'm constantly engaging with my audience there, and I get great engagement. Sometimes I've gotten like 100 comments out of 800 people. I mean, that's insane.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
what I noticed too, is social media. You can't just go on there and just drop off your new thing. Like, hey, new episode
No.
out. Here you go. Boop, there it is. You have to really be quite engaging. I think probably what do you think the formula is? Like how many, like you go on there to really engage versus I'm going to drop off on the episode kind of thing. What's the formula for that?
I would say 10% of the time should be you posting your crap, and 90% of the time should be you engaging your people.
90%. Wow, that's a good ratio. Most time people don't do that,
No.
They post, a lot of their nonsense on there. And then the ones that really kind of like irritate me to death really are the ones where people are posting things that are so out of the box that you're like, why are you even posting that? Like, why are you even throwing that in my feed? It's like almost like I don't know, I can't even think of how crazy the stupid stuff people post on there. And social media is. People post whatever the hell they want, and they just post the stupidest things. And then of course they'll post like their show or their YouTube channel or their whatever they're pushing and things like that. That's all you see them push. That's all they do. And they never ever interact on social media at all. They never comment. They never, repost other people's stuff with comments. They never ask engaging questions. Like the questions are like, have you checked out my show? Is the question, like who cares, So I think you're right about it. You have to be really interactive on social media, and you have to be, it's more about, I guess, being social on social media versus using it as a billboard for all your stuff.
Yeah, it's actually caring about people and knowing who actually cares about you. Like I did an IG live catch up with this guy Tim Biesiegel. He was a guest on my show. I noticed that he had recently become a grandfather for the first time and that he was doing a nonprofit. He was supporting PanCan for pancreatic cancer,
Oh, no way.
and there was like 4 guests that he was doing a YouTube live with. They were all from Star Trek. I think they had been guests on his show. And one of the ladies was like a 20-year pancreatic cancer survivor. And, Jerry Springer passed away from pancreatic cancer, and his publicist's mom passed away from pancreatic cancer. And even though I had already given to the organization, I was like, oh, wow, this stuff definitely touched my life. And I would love to catch up with him as a new grandfather. And it gives you a reason to re-promote the episode, but it also like gives you another way in which you can interact. So I did a Instagram live with him. I set a goal for like $100. I didn't even reach it, but I raised him like an additional like $25. I said, hey, just skip a coffee this week or donate a cheeseburger, like $5. That's it. And it gives your audience a way to interact with you in a new way and like talk about giving and talk about causes that you support. And if you're not going to give to this, just, give to something else and let me know what cause you're passionate about it. So I think doing that is really cool. And then somebody from my audience was like, hey, I'm a giver. I love that you did this with one of your audience members. Let's do a live too. I'll try to help your campaign. Did it raise anything more? No, but it allowed me to interact with her in any way.
That's great. I love that. The whole thing you just said was amazing. It's about supporting other people, about, and also, and it also kind of trickles in a little bit to your brand too, because, these people see what you're doing and they kind of like what you're doing. Like, oh, I'm gonna check you out and do stuff like that too. I think a lot of the podcasters and YouTubers and content creators that I see is where they kind of miss the boat it's also about helping other people too. And you want to be able to support other people and give back to other people and that's what I try to do too. If I see like a post on social media of some kind and they say, I just hit my first milestone of 100 downloads or whatever, I always say congratulations and I share it out and I try to boost them up and things like that. I try to help them out too. It's about, because some other shows might be like, only 100 downloads, what a loser, and where I'm just the opposite. I'm like, let me help you out. Let me try to, share you out with my audience. My audience isn't massive, but it might be bigger than your audience. So let's just kind of help each other out. And that's what I think, that's what I'm trying to do out here. I'm trying to help everybody out the best way I can. That's why I even started the show in the first place, was to help people out. It wasn't to look at me. This is not a look at me show. This is like, let me help you out kind of a show. So that's why I do it in the first place.
I want to tell you something funny alongside that though. Like occasionally I just test ideas. I mean, a lot. I do that. And I just, in like one of my statuses was like big spike in listens. I mean, I did have that last week, but this week, not yet. And so by posting big spike in listens, that's literally all I wrote. I had like 10 messages of people congratulating me in the DMs. And how I responded to that, though, was like, hey, so nice to hear from you. Thank you for cheering me on. Tell me something good in your life. So glad it's Friday. So
yeah,
it's interesting who responds to big spike in listens versus, hey, I just recorded a new song with another podcaster. You're going to hit people different ways. That's why you got to try different things.
Speaking of trying different things, have you ever yet tried a solo episode, Rena?
I have it, and you know this. It is like a sore point for me, and I hear other people doing them well. You do them well.
Oh, thank you.
And I don't know what it is. That is not my.
It wasn't
out of my
easy.
comfort zone.
It was out of my comfort zone too. Let me tell you how I did it. I was so nervous. I think what helps is not to have video. Because you're seeing yourself. You're kind of, what I mean. So it's almost like you try to rehearse something in front of a mirror, kind of thing. Don't do that. I think it kind of throws you off, really. But what I did with that first episode I did, I was so nervous. I was kind of rushing through it a little quickly because I think it's what happens when you're doing a solo thing. And I had no script either, and I rarely script anything out. Maybe some highlights, some points I do now, but for the most part, it's all off the cuff, And so what I do when I do solo episodes is that I record directly into my audio editing software directly. This way allows me to cut and take stuff out as I screw up my words, which happens a lot. Literally like a 30-minute audio show will take me an hour just recording it, because I'll be just like, that was stupid, Chris, cut that out, and I would go back, cut it, and that kind of things. And I think after a while, I kind of got used to it. But I think the thing about the solo shows is what I keep hearing people say is that when you do a solo show, at least on the listener side, the listeners are more engaged with the solo episodes versus the guest interviews that I've seen, especially even for my own listening habits. I've noticed that too. I listen to a few shows, and when they have a guest on, I'll like, not really into it. Like I'm more into what they have to say because I came for them, if that makes any sense.
It totally makes sense. And that's even why I say what makes a good podcast guest is getting the host to share something that they don't normally share.
Right. Or have something important to really talk about too. It all depends on what they're going to be bringing them on about. And if they're talking about something that I'm not really into, then I'm not going to stick around and listen to it. I'm like, well, that's fun and all maybe, but I'm just like, I mean, would I click on that? If I had 100 different things to choose today to listen to, that would not be the one, as I'm saying, of all the things. And time is very precious. So
yes.
we don't have time to watch everything. It's like you go to Netflix and you're flipping through all the things they have available to watch. You're like, I'm not watching that. Maybe I'll watch that one. So I think also when it comes to marketing a podcast or a YouTube channel, I know with YouTube, you get the thumbnail. That's so freaking important to make the thumbnail look amazing and dazzling and almost like bedazzle a thumbnail. So it looks like, oh, I want to watch that one. But on an audio podcast, it has to do with like the titles of the episode. Now you do a lot of guest interviews, all guest interviews. Now, do you title your episodes interview with Dr. So-and-so? That's it. Or do you put something in there like, we're going to learn about this with Dr. So-and-so? Like, how do you do it?
I have tried to start spelling out better what the episode is going to be about, but no, I don't do like, I do include the guest name just for SEO and searchability.
You should always do that. Yeah.
But like this guy that one of my most recent episodes, Faris Al-Halou, he talks a lot about how being laid off after raising $96 million in capital was a huge pivotal moment for him. So even though now he's, built and sold 7 and 8 figure businesses, that time of being laid off is something that almost brings him to tears. So I knew that I needed to use the word laid off in the title.
Okay, so you use that in the description of the episode, right? The title of the episode.
No, in the title of the episode,
right.
I just thought laid off now what? Like we are in layoff season too. So
that does help, yeah. I heard too is that if you get a title, it was something people are searching for.
Yep.
Like physically, like almost like if you were to go into Google and type in like if you go into Google, the Google bar, and you type in how do you, and then like let it fill in the rest kind of thing.
Yeah.
You almost have to do that with your description of your title. And I heard it's all about getting people to push play, because even though they see your artwork and even though they may see your guest or whatever, but even just more than that, you're going to have to see, why am I going to listen to the show? Like, what is in it for me? And I think the sad truth is a lot of podcasters don't realize that, is that the audience, they don't care about your guest. They don't care about it. The only thing they care about is any kind of value you're going to give them. Like, what is it?
100%.
What are you going to give me? Like you don't walk into Starbucks and say, I wonder what the cashier's, doing later today or whatever. I mean, you want to know, like, are they going to serve my drink? Is it going to be how I ordered it?
I actually wonder things about my baristas. Like one was covered in all kinds of buttons. I was like, how long have you been at Starbucks? What do each of those buttons mean?
Yeah, I guess from that perspective, I guess you do. But you really went in there for coffee, I would think, in the first place.
Are you a podcast listener?
Oh, that's the other thing too. Do you ever meet people in the street and say, "Hey, I have a show"? Do you ever like have that interaction with them? With strangers?
My God, my dad is like literally a old school walking marketing representative.
Well, there
like
you go.
Every person he meets on the street, every person he meets on a plane, the people that are taking care of my grandmother.
I'm working on it right now with the shirt.
Yeah, I was actually saying, I was thinking that when you came on and I saw your Podtastic audio t-shirt. I was like, oh, don't have that, but I should probably have like the car wrap, the t-shirt, the
What? Yeah,
mug.
you can do all that stuff. I don't know how well, I mean, that's a lot of money for a lot of stuff. I'm going to Podcast Movement in a few weeks or next week, whenever this thing comes out. And I'm going to, I think I'm getting new shirts made. I don't know, or something. I don't know. But I think, is that too much? Is that you're saying too much when you go to something like that? Rocking your own swag, you know?
I don't think it's too much. If you don't scream, that you love your brand, who else is going to do it, right?
Yeah, I just don't know if it's allowed. I just don't know. I've never been to one of these things before. I don't know if it's like, some of these things are kind of like, when you go to these Facebook groups, they say you can't post your own stuff, you can't do all these rules and stuff like that. I wonder if it's the same thing when you go to a podcasting event like that. I'm
That's
not sure.
actually funny because when I worked for that financial firm, we went to this event that my boss qualified for. It was like an annuities event. Annuities wasn't his main focus of his business, but he did enough annuities to qualify for like this Golden Eagle financial event. And he was like, we should get t-shirts made that says, well, I actually came up with this idea. What happens in Vegas, we leverage, because his
Nice.
whole strategy was like leveraging other people's money. And so he and I show up in these t-shirts and he's trying to talk about his life insurance strategy to a bunch of annuity people. He almost literally got thrown out of the event. It was like an educational, like thought leadership event. It was not like go pitch another services event. But I'm like, hey, sometimes you just try these things and then you learn it's not appropriate.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of not doing that. I probably should go up there and just keep it casual. And I really want to go up there for the marketing aspect of it all, like the networking aspect of it all, like meeting people. Like if you were there, for example, meeting you face to face, you're not going to LA in a few weeks, are you?
No, as a mom of 4, I seriously do not travel a lot, but there's so many events in Houston. There's a Pod Houston, which is
Yes.
like a branch of Pod
Fest
Expo,
or Pod, whatever.
Pod
There's
Fest
so many of them. I
Expo.
don't know. The big one was in Florida, I think, a few months ago. And
Right.
that one I heard is more for like indie podcasters. The one I'm going to in Los Angeles is more of the corporate side of it, but it's the closest one to me. So
Cool.
I'm gonna go check it out. And even if I don't like, hobnob with all the suits, which I probably won't do anyways, I know people from companies that I've interacted with are going to be there from Libsyn. They're all going to be there. And I even
Yeah.
talked to them. I said, hey, if you guys can be there, I want to stop by and say hi. I want to meet you guys because that's my main reason for going in the first place is actually meet these guys face to face and have like maybe do a selfie shot or something. I don't know, however they do it, but maybe learn a few things too. But it's so funny. I actually at work I have to pick out my vacation for the entire year in like November November, December is when I pick vacation out for the following year. And I just so luckily, I picked a week off. That podcast movement's going on at the same week. So I was like, score, I lucked out. So then I could figure out how to go. So because usually these things happen on a week I'm not available. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm not going to go or whatever. But this happened to like lucked out. And it's like, up the road. So it's like easy to get to. So I'm like, why not,
Yeah, for sure. I would even like go on your LinkedIn and search the hashtag of the event and see who else is talking about it.
You have the app. They make you get this app. You have to the email.
Okay.
Email is code to download this app, so you can log into the app. And on the app, it shows you like all of the speakers. Here's what I did. So check this out. So not all of them, but every speaker they have listed on their app, like all of them and their credentials and everything next to them when they're speaking and all this stuff. It also shows their social media links.
Amazing.
And so when I went in there on the Instagram version, everybody who had an Instagram page, I clicked it and I followed it on every single speaker. It was like 200 speakers, like all of them I could find, So I went through there. Not all of them had it. Now, the ones that had like smaller following, I noticed like maybe less than 500 followers on Instagram. I liked it and I went and started liking all of their top like last 7 posts or whatever. Now, the big ones that had like 1 million or something followers, I followed them, but I didn't like interact because they won't really see that. I don't think if I like all their stuff, they won't notice that. But the smaller ones have, and they started following me back. Not all, but they did start following me back. So that's another way to kind of like get maybe new followers, It's always about following them and maybe liking their stuff, or at least commenting on their stuff. I've been trying that angle too, especially on Instagram. I noticed with Instagram, like you be on there, and I don't know how many followers you have. I haven't looked, but some people have like mega followings on Instagram. You're like, how in the hell they have mega followings? They're like 500,000 followers, like they look like regular people to me.
Bots.
They think, maybe they paid for them.
Oh, yeah.
I did an episode on that recently, and I found out. Oh, by the way, do you know how it actually works when one of those podcast promoters promise you X amount of downloads? Do you know how they pull that off?
I don't.
So this is how
Bots.
Yes, that there is an algorithm, bot algorithm. This is kind of how it works, is that they will promise you 10,000 downloads if you pay X amount of dollars or whatever, that kind of stuff. The way it works, actually get a download on your actual podcast, you really only need to physically download a certain portion of the file. And that counts as a download to the media host. It goes back as a download. And you see, I got a download. Great. So the way it kind of works is that they actually have a team of people that send out these like almost kind of very clickbait, either emails or spam stuff or whatever. And the second you click on it, the link in the background of your device, it actually downloads the portion of the file, which will count as a download. And they have that system set up to send it out to millions of people. So that's kind of how they trick. So the person actually download the file doesn't even listen to the show, doesn't even know what a podcast is probably, and just it just gets downloaded in the background. Yet to the actual podcaster, it shows as an actual like physical download. Oh, I got a download. And that's how they operate their business. It's all shady McShaderson, if you ask me.
I actually know another more legit way that we can talk about offline, or I guess I could share a little bit about it. I don't know, but the Headliner app.
Yeah, I've used that.
Yeah, like while you upload your show to the Headliner app, which creates audiograms, they have an option where you can listen to other podcasts and discover other podcasts. So you're actually getting your podcast played by other content creators while you're uploading your show.
Do you have to pay for that feature?
It is an option.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, money makes the world go around. It does. All these little features for stuff like that. But
that's a better target because you might actually get in front of a podcaster who finds your show helpful or interesting or want to connect with you.
Oh, definitely. So, podcast listeners listen to podcasts. It's just a golden rule. It's kind of how it usually works. So if you're going to push your show out to anybody, I would push your show out to other podcasters. That's why going on other shows as a guest or as a host, or whatever, or even, but yeah, I mean, just getting in front of other podcasters is the best way to do things. And I do appreciate you, Rena, stopping by today and sharing your wonderful wisdom. So where can everybody find out all about you and all your wonderful stuff?
Rena Friedman Watts on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Twitter, TikTok. I try to have the same photo and name in all of those places. Although on Twitter it is Rena with 2 E's. But then under that, it says Rena Friedman Watts. I'm pretty findable that way. And then bettercalldaddy.com.
Fantastic. Well, I want to wish you the best Friday and an amazing weekend and, wrangling those 4 kids and having a wonderful time with that.
Thank you so much for having me. This was an awesome conversation.
Hey, Rena, thank you so much for stopping by today. I really did appreciate our conversation. It was amazing. It was fantastic. Hey, listen, I'm sorry I couldn't get the live stream thing to work. I don't know. I'm not a very tech savvy kind of guy sometimes. It just doesn't work out that way. But our conversation did, and that was what really mattered in the first place. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end of this very episode. If you have learned something new today, if you got any amazing value from the conversation I had with Rena, please do me a favor and her a favor and subscribe to her show. Link to it in the show notes of this very episode. Show notes is where I put all my links, all the good stuff. Scroll on down. There it is. And once again, thank you so much for being here. I truly do appreciate your time today. Time is very precious, and I cannot wait to share all the amazing things that I discovered at Podcast Movement this week as it's going on right now. And don't forget, if you want to catch the live stream, subscribe directly to my YouTube channel. It's YouTube Podtastic Audio. I will put a link to it in the show notes down below. Don't you worry, but please subscribe to my channel. That way, when I go live, you are ready for it, and we're all good to go. And until next time, happy podcasting.